Hello there. I said I'd do another vlog because I've been doing them. I'm just going to go into town and get a watch. I'm just going to tell you a story about the watch. And this ties in with the subject about value and how we see the world and things. And it's really funny because I've pointed this out many times now, but I live in a throwaway caravan. End of life, nobody would want it given because of the work that you'd have to put into it because of the leak and blah blah blah, and having to tow it away when it hasn't moved for 20 odd years. So it, to some person, they'd see that as scrap and they'd go, I wouldn't have that given. I wouldn't live in there if I was homeless and had nowhere to go. That's what some people would say. And yet I'm surrounded by vans, some of them, you're talking thousands. There's one van on here, they bought it a few years ago and it was something crazy like 40 grand. And I don't see the value in it. And it's a funny thing because obviously it's worth 40 or more of this one when you look at the value. And yet I'd rather have mine. So it's a funny thing. You know, I think the happiest people are the ones who are happy with the least. And people who strive to have the best of everything, or what we're told is the best, which is something newer and more shiny and more valuable, but only because the media told you or somebody else. All these caravans, to me, are all the same. The good thing about mine is I can decorate mine and I can bling it. I can take things out and I can add things to it. I can do what I want because it's not going to be anybody else's van when I finish with it. Whereas you buy a van for 40 grand and you dare touch it. You wouldn't even dare live in it. You'd be really mindful of how you was within that van. And you wouldn't let people in it. I wouldn't. If I'd spent all that money, I wouldn't let anybody in it. I wouldn't like visitors or anything because I'd be consciously aware that people might not respect it. And if things get damaged in a 40 grand van, it's more upsetting than an end of life one. So it's funny, but the story of the watch, this is quite funny to me. So over a year ago, I found a watch in the toilets down here. Now, normally we hand everything into the office because people claim it or they don't claim it. But what we normally do is leave them out on the shelf where they're found for, say, 2 days. And I found this watch, this cheap watch, and it was sat with some shower gels. And it was on the shelf for 2 days, and I thought, well, obviously no one's coming for it because it must have been somebody who was on holiday and they've gone home and no one's reported it missing, so you just do whatever. So I took it and I put it on my wrist and I've been wearing it every day for over a year. Anyway, the other day, one of the ladies here came up to me and she said, this man's just come into the reception and said that you're wearing his wife's watch. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she said, well, he thinks that you've got that watch on and it's a limited edition. And I'm like, it's a cheap Casio. And I've never looked at the name of the watch because it's just a watch. And it looks, I'm sorry to say, to me it looks like a £10 watch because I don't have value for stuff like this, right? Anyway, I lied initially and said it's mine, I bought it, blah blah blah. But I went home and I looked online and I thought, oh my god, it was, I'm trying to think what it was called now. It'll come to me. An Eco watch, a Citizen Eco watch, limited edition. And the one that I found online was the exact same one that I had been wearing for over a year. And second hand this was. And it was £288 second hand. And I'm like, oh, I can't. My conscience. So I handed it in. And I said, I'm sorry, I lied. I honestly thought it was a £10 watch. It didn't mean nothing to me. The way that I've been wearing it is like a £10 watch. So I take it off at night and throw it on the bedside table or whatever. I work outside all year round in all weathers. I'm working with mud constantly in the rain and whatever else. That watch could have easily got damaged. And I thought, oh my gosh, it a good job it didn't, because it was worth so much money, but to me it wasn't. And then I was thinking about it. The value that we see in things is different for each one of us. There are people who will guard a plastic toy and somebody else will just throw it in the bin, you know, and we've all got our own things, haven't we? Like our sense of value of what things are worth, but we're like this with people as well. And it's quite funny because people like me end up on their own and you don't want nobody anymore. You get to a point where you've done, because you needed somebody who saw you as the prize, as the thing that they could hold on to and value, and instead we were treated like I treat that watch. Do you know what I mean? And it's funny because that's how we treat people sometimes, and sometimes we overlook things and people and don't appreciate them until they're gone. Now, it's a funny thing, but I think people like me are going to come into our own at some point, because we're the people who appreciate nature, simple living, just simple stuff. I don't need designer clothes, I don't need jewellery, I don't need designer perfumes, I don't need to be spoilt with like fancy restaurants and all the rest of it. I am so happy to have the fundamental basics and just enjoy the right company and the right environment, and that to me is wealth. And we're coming to a time where the whole system's collapsing, and all these people have clung on to the designer stuff and all the surgery and all the things to look perfect, to try and outdo the next door neighbour or the next person or whatever. And they're going to suffer the most, because having to give up your whole essence, and if it's all based on appearance and my house is better than your house and my car's flashier than yours, how are you going to manage when the system collapses and stuff? And this is why I think people like me are going to come into our own, because we already live a simple life and we already don't ask for much. I don't expect much from people. I just, I accept that we're all flawed. I don't want anybody in a personal way anymore, because like I said, I haven't been valued enough, and I've got to a point now where I come first now, and I value me more than anyone else ever did. So to be alone to me is the wealth. But I just thought it was a funny thing about the watch. Now, what is funny about that watch also is the guy told the reception that I've got his wife's watch on, and he was embarrassed to say it, but he hasn't approached me. And what is making it more funny is nobody knows who he is, and he hasn't been back, and this has been days. So who is this guy? And I have no idea. So the watch is sitting there now in reception, and somebody's said how I was wearing it, but they haven't come back and said, did you have a word with Kelly and did she hand it in? And they knew my name. So it must be a seasonal or a recurring holiday maker, but either way, I just find it funny how they mentioned it and said that and then haven't come back for the outcome, because I handed the watch straight back. So yeah, it's interesting though. So apparently the watch was worth about over £1,000 brand new, and he bought it for his wife, so obviously it's sentimental and special to them, and I wouldn't dream of taking something away from somebody. But to me, it was a Casio watch for £10, and I didn't have any value on it at all. So that's why I can't understand why I'm single, because I'm cheap. I'm going to throw another story in this, because this is hilarious, right? We grew up with a nana who told some tall yarns, and she turned everything into something bigger than it was. And I remember she had this jewellery box, and she used to tell me that all the jewels in there belonged to her great grandma, and it was all like priceless diamonds, and it was really, really expensive. And she gave me two things. One was an owl brooch, which I wore on my coat for a long time. And the other one was an engagement ring, and she gave it me when I got engaged to my first husband. Anyway, I'd only been wearing it about 2 months, and one day it just broke in half, and I was absolutely devastated. And I thought, oh God, how would I tell my nana that? And I felt so bad, and I was really upset because I thought, that's a priceless heirloom. Anyway, I went to a jeweller's thinking, am I even going to be able to afford to get this fixed? And I took it to the jeweller and I said, my diamond ring has just broken in half and I don't know what to do. And it belonged to my nana and her mother, and I don't know what to do because it's broken, and how much is it going to cost? And he took it off me and looked at me and he went, are you all right? Are you having a laugh? And I went, sorry. He went, are you making fun of me or something? And I went, what are you talking about? And he went, that ain't gold. And I said, what is it? And he said, tin, if that. He said, no, do you know what? It's not even tin. He said, that is something you'd find in one of those little Kinder Easter egg things in a fairground. And I'm like, that belonged to my great-great-grandma. And he just looked at me like my lights had gone out. And he said, I don't know who's told you that, Jan, but it's not even worth 5p. I went back to my nana and I looked at her and I said, Nan, I said, my ring broke. And she went, oh, you're joking? I said, no. And I'd been wearing it as an engagement ring. And I said it broke in half, and I went to jewellers and stuff. And while I was telling that story, she started... my nana used to laugh with her shoulders, right? She didn't laugh loud. She laughed like muttly. You know when you used to go like that? And she'd put her hand up there, and her shoulders were going, and tears started streaming down her face. And I went, you told me that was worth a lot of money and it was priceless. And she just couldn't stop laughing. And I thought, I can't trust you anymore with anything. So the next time I wore the brooch, I looked at it and thought, yeah, that's worth 10p as well. But I couldn't stop laughing afterwards. But again, because she convinced me it was worth a lot of money, I treat it like a precious diamond, and it wasn't even worth 5p. And oh, that was funny. So isn't it funny how we all view people, things, the environment, the world, everything? We all look at things through our own eyes, and we all value things according to how we perceive them. And I just find those things funny. But anyway, I am going to go to town and buy a watch now, and I'm going to Argos, and the watch that I'm buying costs £8.99, because I would never ever spend hundreds of pounds on a watch when I work in dirt all day long in all weathers. So if I spend £8.99 on a watch and it breaks, I'll just go, never mind, and buy another one. So if that guy ever watches my videos, please don't ever think I'm a thief, because I'll tell you, there is no way I would have even worn a watch that was worth that. I would have handed it straight in, or I would never have worn it ever. There's just no way. So anyway, I'm going to go now. We're going to go to town. I've just painted my van purple inside on the ceiling. It needs another coat on another day. I'm going to make a Sunday dinner today for me and my little girls, because they enjoy Sunday dinners. And we will go and we will see you later. Bye-bye.